welcome everyone to our new video series, The Real Talk with John Tayeb. And today I have home inspector, the one and only, the experienced guy, the guy with the skills, the guy who knows the stuff, the guy who doesn't mind to get on the knees and get his hands dirty, Tony Christoforou with Touchstone. Tony, thank you very much for having us.
John, thank you for having me. Hello everybody, good afternoon. Almost got confused with morning. My name is, like you said, Tony Christoforou. My company is Touchstone Home Inspection. I've been in the home inspection business for going on 15 years now. So it goes pretty
for
quick.
a while.
For a while, exactly. So we're a full-time home inspection company. We're not a part-time company. This is all that we do is home inspections. And we specialize in primarily residential properties, but we also do commercial properties
as well.
We do small commercial as well, but primarily residential, 1 to 3, 1, 2, and 3 family homes is the bulk of the work.
Is there a difference, like a certification? Do you need to be certified as a home inspector when it comes to residential and commercial? Is there like a different license for you guys to obtain to do the inspections?
Yeah, so New York State has licensing law that went into effect in 2005. And that affects all home inspectors, but it's geared towards residential.
Okay.
So that only licenses home inspectors for residential properties. So everybody in New York State that does a home inspection for you needs to be licensed by the state. So far as commercial properties goes, there is no licensing. So pretty much anyone can do a commercial inspection for you.
Wow.
Correct.
You would be thinking it's probably the other way around, actually.
You would think so, but commercial is just, a lot of times historically it would be engineers.
Okay.
Or architects that might do a commercial property, but home inspectors now do that. Depending on the size of the property, we may have other experts and specialists come in and help us with those.
Okay. And so you say you've been in the business for 15 years, and so in 15 years you probably have seen it all, I would say, right? The good ones, the bad ones, the easy ones, and some really, really tragic ones, I would say.
Yeah, we see some interesting things in the business. We get into a lot of houses, and everything from near perfect to homes
slum dunk and
that you can't even breathe in. You need to wear a mask in and things like that. So we see a lot of different things, but I would never say that I've seen it all.
There's always something new.
There's always something new, something different, something surprising that we get to see when we're in this business.
And so, what was like the worst inspection you ever done, or whichever comes to your mind first?
I've done a couple really bad ones. I did one early on in my career. Went into the home. It was an elderly gentleman that lived in the house, and the house just smelled so bad that you couldn't spend more than.
It was deteriorating. You probably never fixed.
Yeah,
anything.
Just never cleaned, and just it was a little bit of a hoarding situation, I think.
I gotcha.
And you could spend about 10 minutes in the house at a time. You had to keep going out and coming back in.
Oh wow.
They had an old heating system that was covered in asbestos. That was all loose and falling apart.
Wow. Wow.
So it was a lot of things going on. But
so it's pretty dangerous too. I mean, asbestos, right?
It's dangerous too.
Play with that stuff.
Yeah, it could be hazardous. So you want to be careful, where you go, what you're doing. So there's a little hazard in the game that we play too. So.
I mean, I do have some questions from audience.
Okay.
So with your permission, if I can go into it, I will start.
Absolutely.
And so many times the buyers, when they're purchasing a home, they ask, do I need to do a home inspection?
Right.
Is it something necessary for them to do? So, I mean, what is your take on it? What would you suggest?
So I would say that a home inspection is not required, but in my opinion, it is necessary. So it's something that you really, really need to have done. You're making a large purchase, large investment, one of the largest, if not the largest you're ever going to make in your life, unless you buy another house down the road. So I think it's very important to cover your bases and understand what the condition of the home is. And at minimum, at least get a second set of eyes with you. And you get to spend a couple of hours on the property where if you're typically on a typical offer on a home, you're there for maybe 10 or 15 minutes and you're required to make a decision and make an offer. So you don't really get to spend time. So it affords you the ability to spend some time in the house with another set of eyes, a professional, hopefully someone that's qualified, and can kind of help you through the process, give you some ideas also, and give you some, find some problems, but also give some solutions to you.
So I mean, so what you're saying is definite yes, and while you do the inspection, it's also good to be present.
Yes.
For the purchaser, or it's okay if the agent is over there and sort of let them know what's going on with the house.
Yeah, it's perfectly okay to not be there and have your agent there. However, it's very beneficial for you to be there yourself. Sometimes people will have a family member come, a father or a sibling or something. That's okay. But if you're there firsthand, if you're going to be the one living in the house and paying for the repairs and the upgrades, you should be there. We encourage all our buyers to be there for the inspection and be present. You're paying for it. You should be there, get your money's worth. That's part of the inspection. So you will get a written report,
Okay.
but the oral part of it, the hands-on being there, is a really large part of it.
So the explanation, let's say, with
Correct.
heating, how does the
Right.
heating works, if they have a hot
Right.
water tank to warm up
Right.
the water, how to operate that, is that included as well? Like
That's
you go
included.
into,
Yeah.
how does the stuff works as well with the people?
Yeah, we do. We get into operation and answer questions while we're there also. And then when if you just do not show up for the inspection and you just get a report, it's very difficult sometimes to decode what the inspector was trying
To
to say.
explain what's in it?
So, most inspectors, or a good inspector, will be pretty clear in the message that they're giving you in a
Okay.
report, but it's always easier, in my opinion, to see it firsthand and then reference back once you have the report. Say, oh, now I understand. This is the crack he was talking about. I remember seeing that. We talked about it when we were there, so now I understand it. Now I have it written down.
I gotcha.
So
So what you're saying, it's always good to be there. So if there's an issue, you can point it out to them so they can see it, and maybe you can give them some explanation also how they can fix that stuff. Do you guys do that as well?
Right.
Or do they need to get like maybe a certified contractor to come by and give them their take on it?
It's going to depend on what the situation is. So like I said earlier, the industry changed a lot. In 2005, they started with licensing in New York. So prior to that,
so before no licensing at all.
it was the Wild West. So anybody could become a home inspector. They wake up one morning and just say, hey, I'm going to go inspect houses. Go collect a fee, and then
They paint their apartment and they say, oh, I'm pretty handy actually.
Yeah.
Why not make it a business, right?
why not be a home inspector? Someone said,
Okay.
you'd be good at that, and they go do
Wow,
it.
wow.
So then 2005, they started with licensing, which put a set of standards of practice into place and insurance requirements and different things. So that kind of changed the industry and what we do. It made it a little more defined. So now we have a little more defined scope of what the home inspection is.
Okay.
So while you could have a contractor come along and do that, you should have a home inspector do your
As well.
inspection. Most home inspectors, or I would say a lot of home inspectors, if they're not trained properly, what they're going to do is they will show up at the home, they will hopefully let you walk around with them, although a lot of inspectors don't want you to really be there for the inspection or to ask questions and interrupt them.
Why is that?
I think I'm not sure if they think it's a liability thing or they just feel like they need to do their job and focus. In my opinion, that's shortchanging you as the buyer. You should be able to be present for what he's doing. Number one, just to kind of see what he's doing during the inspection and learn about the home. So if something does come up during the course of the inspection, you'll be able to be there and see it, like I said, firsthand.
Okay.
If I go and do my inspection for an hour and a half and come back and get you, and just say, yeah, these are the issues, and you weren't there to see them, then you lost some of the benefit from being there in the first place.
Okay.
So
I mean, it's what you're saying. It's always important to be there for the inspection.
Absolutely.
And be able to see exactly what's really going on with the property, and being able for the inspector to point it out to the buyer so he can be aware of it.
yes,
Right. Okay,
very
that's
important
great.
to be there.
Also sometimes the buyer might ask, is it okay to perform the inspection myself? Can I have a contractor, or maybe a friend,
Right.
who has a home and has, some sort of experience with it to do the inspection for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea to bring someone along if you have a contractor that's a friend or a family member or a parent or sibling, like we said earlier, to kind of help you and give you some ideas. But ultimately, for your actual inspection, you should have a professional do it. You should have a licensed guy that is responsible for what they're doing and is obligated to give you their honest opinion of it. So, in my opinion, pay the money, whatever the investment is. So don't look at it as a cost. Look at it as an investment. So you're purchasing a home. Let's say we're in Queens, so $500,000.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and you're on the hook for that. Once you buy the house, whether they said it's as is or they're going to fix or whatever the case is, you own it. So whatever you think the seller or your inspector or your realtor or whoever might be responsible for, ultimately it's all on you. So you have that burden of responsibility. So you need to have someone professional there to not only walk you through it, give you a written report, and also it's going to be a guide for you. So we write all these issues and suggestions down in the report.
Improvements.
But now improvements.
Okay.
So you have that as a guide. You can go back to that in the
Alright.
future and say, hey, wait a minute, I remember the inspector said something about this. Now it's time to do it.
I
What did he
gotcha.
say?
I gotcha.
So now it can take you back in time and you can go find that issue.
So for example, if there's a roof on the house and the inspector says the roof is probably older than 10 years and maybe it will need fixing in the next 5 years, you sort of can pencil it down in your calendar and be aware of it. So in 5 years I would have to change the roof. Is that something which you were talking about?
Right, something like that. And then
Okay.
there's also like you said with that, or maybe the boiler's getting a little older, so you have in the back of your mind to replace it.
Okay.
Maybe there's a comment about something that maybe there was a prior water issue,
Okay.
might have been corrected, but it's something you want to keep an eye on going
Gotcha.
forward. And maybe it comes back one day and say, wait a minute, I remember something about this. Oh, it can go back to the report and see what the cause might have been. Maybe the inspector was able to figure out what it was and you forgot.
So there's a lot of also preventive work for the buyer,
Right.
to do preventive work on the house,
Right.
so the issue doesn't become a huge issue down
Exactly.
the line, right?
Yeah, so do you want to get in, so should we get into maybe kind of what the home inspection is also? We'll
Yeah.
kind of touch on
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
because I think we're flowing right into that right
For
now.
sure, yeah, absolutely.
So what your home inspection is, what your home inspection is not, it's not your appraisal, right? So we're not going to determine the value of the property. That'll
Okay.
come after contract.
You have
right?
that, you get that sometimes?
Right. Yeah, we get that question a lot of times. Like,
Okay.
well, what's a house worth? Is it worth it? We don't really get involved in that at all. I mean, we're in different neighborhoods, so we have an idea of what the market is, but
Exactly.
we don't touch that. We're there to determine what the condition of the home is, right? So the home inspection report, it's a visual inspection geared towards determining what the
Okay.
condition of the home is, right? So condition of the home means your structure, your electrical and heating systems, so all your mechanical systems, your roof, your plumbing, your
Okay.
foundation, potential water issues, leaks, floods, and safety issues. So anything that can affect health or safety are pretty much number one.
Okay, so
Or
like
1A and 1B.
electrical, or like you mentioned the asbestos on the
Right.
piping, stuff
So
like that.
electrical issues, major structural issues, roof issues, things that can affect how you live in the home. Like I said, safety. So any wiring that isn't done properly,
Okay.
burnt wiring, signs of, I know you just touched on that, so environmental things.
Okay.
So your home inspection is not going to include environmental testing, but it should include a basic general knowledge that every home inspector has. So if there are visible signs of, let's say, possibly asbestos or possibly mold, they should be able to let you know, at least verbally.
About that.
Right? Some guys may not be comfortable putting in a report, but they should tell you verbally at least what it is. With regards to mold, as an example, as of 2017, the beginning of the year, they started with mold licensing. So I can't, as a home inspector, if I'm not licensed for mold, I can't even use the word mold. So I'll have to say,
it.
you can use certain phrasing to
I
kind of
gotcha.
suggest what it is, because we all know what it is, but unless you're testing it, you never know 100%.
Wow.
So what we include in our inspections is basically like a visual inspection for environmentals.
I
And then
gotcha.
if we see, look, you know what, it looks like this is asbestos or mold, and we'll guide you and let you know what's involved with it and what next step you might have to take.
So let's say if there might be a possible issues with the mold or asbestos, so you would sort of recommend so they can seek a certified professional in that
Right.
field who really knows what the issue is, right? Sort of.
Correct. Yeah, so if we have a lot of times commonly asbestos you would have on older heating pipes in an old home that had steam heat.
Okay.
They've all had asbestos in them. You'll find it in floor tiles, you'll find it in siding, and then it was in all different kinds of building materials. So we're concerned with the ones that are visible and it could be hazardous.
So I don't think, like you say, visible. Let's say, if something's inside a wall, how can you tell if there's asbestos inside a wall? Or maybe if, let's say, the insulation, right? All the homes,
Right.
they don't really have insulation inside the walls, right? And, does it include in the home inspection to really find out what's inside the walls? Or is just what can you see? Can you like break down the wall to open it up and say, hey, is it good? Is it bad? Can you do that? Or
I would love to break down a lot of walls in a lot of the homes, but home inspectors don't carry hammers for a reason, because it's too tempting for us. So basically, it is limited in that it's a visual inspection. So we can't break down walls.
Okay.
We can't dismantle everything. We do or should remove an electrical panel.
So
We
you
should
can-
take the cover off the
I
boiler.
gotcha.
So any user type controls or user removable things we'll do.
You can do that. Okay.
Then there's limitations in what we can do. Part of that is from like a liability standpoint. None of us own the home, right?
Exactly.
So the seller still owns the house.
That's correct.
So we can't destroy his property.
That's correct.
So we do have a limitation in that. But a good home inspector should be able to give you a very good idea. So it's like painting with a big brush, right? So we want to cover as much as we can in the house to give you a good general idea of what the condition is. So it's not really specific sometimes, but it's a broad brush. We want to know that overall the windows are good, the electrical is good and safe. We may not catch a tiny little thing or may not see something behind the wall, but typically if there's a big problem, we'll see it or see a sign of it. Maybe the seller tried to cover something up. Maybe there's a bump in the wall. Maybe there's a crack or stain or something.
Water damage.
That can help us, you know. And then we'll get into probably in a little bit like some tools that we use also. So I don't know if we can.
So I mean, so for them, let's say, you know, how. So what kind of tools they use to, let's say, you know, maybe there's a water damage or maybe there's a moisture or mold, you know, there might be a mold going on, right?
Right.
So I know that's a big issue, you know, mold. A lot of people, they have an issue with health issues from that. So what type of tools do you use to tell if there might be some issues, you know, that sort?
Yeah, so your home inspector should carry a certain minimum of tools. There's standards that we have.
No hammer.
No hammers. That's a rule. That's an unwritten rule. No hammers for home inspectors. No pry bars. No sledgehammers. Anything like that. But they do have certain equipment that they should carry. Your minimum standards, basically, you have a flashlight and a screwdriver to prod the wood.
Okay.
That's probably all they're required to have.
Okay.
But most professionals will go a step above that. So we carry electrical testers. We carry carbon monoxide detector. So we check for carbon monoxide. The silent killer.
Okay.
Right, so you can't smell it, you can't see it, but you could be overcome by carbon monoxide. So we do a quick test on carbon monoxide in the home. We use, like I said, a very bright flashlight that we use. Ladder. I'd be very leery of a home inspector that showed up and doesn't have any kind of ladder.
So how big of a ladder? Like, you know, I experience it sometimes. The inspector said, you know, I have a small ladder, but I can't get to the roof because I don't have a tall ladder to reach over there.
Well, there's technology now, so there's ways around that. So I'll give you guys some tricks. But so personally, the ladder that I carry gets me up to about 13 feet, which is about big enough that I need. If you're going by safety standards, some guys will carry a really big extension ladder, but there's not many that do that anymore.
Okay.
It's more of a contractor thing. From a liability and an injury standpoint, a lot of home inspectors don't want to do that. So what we use is there's guys now that use drones. So there's the drone technology out there to use.
So it's like a really high tech right now.
So so that technology is getting better, which we've experimented with it, but we haven't brought the drone in yet, but it will. What we use is a camera pole. So we have a Wi-Fi camera that we use. We have an extension, so we're able to see 99 out of 100 roofs that we need to see. We can get up to the chimney and the liner.
Okay.
So there's ways without getting us injured and having someone follow us up on a ladder to be able to see the roof and give people the condition of it.
That's amazing. Wow.
So we have things like that. So the other thing, what else? A gas detector. So we have gas leaks. Natural gas does have a smell to it, that additive that they put in.
Okay.
So we use our nose. That's number one, and number two, we have a sniffer so we can identify where the leak is coming from.
Okay.
So we use that. And some of the really cool ones is, like you were saying about moisture and mold. We use a moisture meter, which we can put on the surface and determine if there's active moisture, either coming from a plumbing leak or from the outside wall. And we could also sense inside the wall. So it gives us like a dual purpose. So what that does is, I can tell if the moisture is behind the finished material, so behind the sheetrock, and coming through the foundation, or is it on the surface? And maybe there's just a lot of moisture built up in the basement because the windows are closed, or maybe there was a leak somewhere else.
It's in the bathroom, right? It happens a lot in the bathroom.
You get condensation, right?
Yeah, if you don't have proper ventilation.
Right, so I get that question. So, I see all this mold or mildew in the bathroom and stains and it's leaking. Well, it's really not leaking. What's happening is either they're not turning on the exhaust fan, or the exhaust fan's not working, or they don't have one.
They don't have one, yeah.
Right, or they rely on the window, and when it's cold, no one turns opens the window. We don't want to freeze. So a lot of times the ventilation. And the other cool tool that we use, a lot of guys are starting to use it now, the ones that actually want to invest and spend money because they're expensive, is a thermal imaging camera.
Okay.
So if anyone remembers the movie Predator, when he's tracking his prey and he's using that cool camera with the colors, we have something like that.
Okay, wow.
So what that does is, a lot of times there may be an active leak that we can't find, or you can't see visually, but the thermal camera will allow us to see that and get a little jump on it. So if someone is promoting that they have thermal imaging and they tell you they can see inside walls, be a little leery, because that's not really what it does. All it really sees is the surface, and it can pick up the difference in temperature and moisture, and a lot of times it's evaporation. So if I have a wet area and now it's evaporating off, I pick up that difference in temperature.
And so this camera would also tell you if there's like insulation, if there's maybe cold air coming inside a house, especially now, being winter.
Yeah, it could be used for that.
As well.
You have to be careful with that. And if you ever have an inspection, and the inspector's going around with the camera and they're saying, oh, there's no insulation here, none there, none there. Maybe yes, maybe no. A lot of times with home inspection, our favorite phrase is, it depends. So it depends a lot of times.
It depends on many things.
Depends on many things. So, but we can find missing insulation batts. We can find that sometimes the insulation in a wall will be compressed. It'll shrink down a little. So along the top edges of the framing, you'll have a little cold air.
All right.
So it doesn't necessarily mean you have to rip the walls down.
Okay.
Because you're not going to get that much benefit out of it. But if maybe there's a whole section of insulation missing, or we have a cold wall, we could find that.
Well, let's say if you point it against the window, maybe doors,
right.
you can see
there's
a cold air coming
in. You can
in.
see cold air sneaking in around the doors and windows. Because a lot of window installers, when they do the windows, they just put them in place and there's no insulation done.
They don't put no insulation.
So they're relying on the caulking, and then the caulking dries out, or they miss the spot, and now there's a lot of cold air coming in.
Yeah, makes sense.
Or it could come up behind the siding in an older home.
Okay.
So, but it's a good tool.
The other thing is, how would you suggest, if somebody is looking for a home inspector, right? Price range, what do you guys charge, for inspection?
Okay.
Does it vary on the size of the house? One family, two family, three family? Does it vary on the neighborhood too?
Right.
If the house has a pool, does it cost more?
Right.
Do you guys cover that as well? The house has, 5-car garage, which is great, right?
Right.
Does it impact the cost of the inspection as well?
Right. Okay, so yeah, it's an interesting one, and it's industry wide, little variations. So everyone does things a little bit different. Typically speaking, home inspections are priced basically by the square footage. In Queens, a lot of times in Brooklyn, we don't have the square footage.
Okay.
So in that case, we're going by number of bedrooms, bathrooms. We'll take a look at the property size. Sometimes you'll have, and we can figure out about what it is. But typically, it's priced by square footage. Age also impacts. So a house that was built 10 years ago is different than a house that was brownstone that was built in the late 1800s.
Wow.
There's a lot of different things to look
so
for.
The new one is more expensive. Is that what you're saying? Or?
New houses usually could be done for a little bit less.
Okay.
At least in my pricing, it's newer. There's not as much old stuff to be looking for. Not as much time has passed.
That's right.
For people to make changes and modifications that maybe weren't legal, or maybe hide something. So if a house is 15 or 20 years old, less chance of hiding something than one that's 80 years old.
People would do that. People would actually try to hide something from the buyer.
Yeah, shockingly, people will sometimes hide things. Well, maybe not from the buyer. They might have had good intentions and did a temporary repair, or might have done something, or hired a contractor that didn't really know what they were doing.
Okay.
And maybe just didn't do a quality repair, and now it's hidden, or we'd have to find it. And, so in a newer house, less chance of that. So age impacts it, like you said. Swimming pools. Central air conditioning units, what else? Any kind of spa or detached, some houses, if you get higher end stuff. So pricing in my model, some guys will do their inspection pricing based on what the house selling price is. We don't do that unless we're talking higher end properties.
I mean, if you go to Long Island, right, you might have, 5,000 square feet house for, 200,000. And if you go to Queens, some parts you might have 1,000 square feet house for like 2 million.
It depends. Right. So pricing, if we have a really high priced home, a lot of times that'll mean that there's more systems, higher square footage. Okay. Maybe they have radiant floor heating that we can check. There might be more work involved.
I gotcha.
We did a house recently, that had geothermal heating systems and solar panels and all kinds of.
You have to inspect all that.
Right. So it's a little more research, a little more time putting the report together. So it's a matter of time.
So it sounds like a lot of work. I mean,
it could be some work. Yeah. So
how long it takes usually on the average?
So your average inspection, and I'll get into that. I'll go back to the pricing in a minute. So an average house, my opinion, should take anywhere from an hour and a half to 2.5 hours to inspect.
Okay.
That'll be start to finish on site. If someone's printing up a report on site, maybe it could be a little more than that because they're doing the report and giving it to you. Some guys do that. Right, immediately. I found, we used to do that. I found some flaws with that way of doing it. A lot of times you're rushed and you end up missing things.
That's correct.
So we get the reports out within 24 hours. We try to get them out quick. But usually an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. If there's a guy there and he's there in less than an hour and he's out, it's probably an issue. Either he's cheating you or he really doesn't know what he's doing. To me, that's a rushed inspection. and you should be very leery of anyone in and out in less than an hour. The outside of the house should take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Your basement should take at least a half hour. So right there, we're at our 45 minutes to almost an hour.
Immediately.
So how do they do the rest of the home and get into the attic and explain things to you and take that time with you? Right. So if it's less than an hour, I'd be very, very nervous.
And if it takes longer?
If it takes longer, I might be a little nervous also. So if it's taking much more than 3 hours, don't get me wrong, we have inspections on a larger property take a long time. Occasionally we'll have a smaller house that'll take us 3 hours just because we're there answering questions for the buyers, or it's in really poor condition and we really have to get involved, or maybe we have difficulty accessing something and we try to get in there, or maybe there's a crawl space or something takes time.
Okay.
But an average house, let's say a Cape style home or a smaller colonial, about 2 hours figure.
Okay.
Over 3-4 hours, I would question the inspector and what his knowledge is, because realistically you should know what you're looking at. And the difference of checking maybe every single outlet versus checking a sample isn't that much time. So I would question what they're doing for 4 or 5 hours.
Okay. And the pricing, so you said, it depends. So
pricing,
just my question would be also, so if the home is 2,000 square feet, one family, and 2,000 square feet, two family, is it the same price, or is it going to be more for the two family, because then you have 2 kitchens, 2 baths? 2
kitchens, 2 electric meters, 2 gas meters, possibly 2 heating systems, 2 water heaters. So so multifamily homes are going to be priced higher than a single family. So assuming a single family home, and then the other difference in pricing is going to be whether or not your home inspector includes a termite inspection. We didn't get into that, so I'm going to touch on that real quick. So your lender, typically you're going through a bank, is going to require you to have a termite inspection.
It's always required. You need to get it.
Okay. You need to have a termite inspection. So our business model is that we include the termite inspection with our home inspection. Automatically, it's included in our fee, and we also include a 1-year termite guarantee.
Nice.
So if there's no signs of termites, we have a pest control company that covers that for 1 year, and it's all taken care of.
And if there's an issue, let's say if there's termite damage or maybe termites present, do you guys fix that as well, or is it something you would make the buyer aware of it, and they need to get somebody on the side to take care of that?
Yeah, we make them aware of it. In that case, we make the seller or the listing agent aware of it also, so it's taken care of. It needs to be treated typically, unless there's recent paperwork that says it was treated or taken care of. Okay. So you want to make sure that it gets treated, so we provide you with the paperwork necessary for you to get that treatment done prior to closing. All right, so like I said, assuming that the home inspection is including a termite report, which some guys don't. The other thing to be wary of is a lot of guys will tell you they include a termite inspection. A termite inspection in New York State can be done by anybody. There is really no licensing required.
So you don't have to be certified for that.
You don't have to be. We are certified. I'm a certified pest technician. So we can do the inspections and fill out the form that the bank needs, called the NPMA 33 form. So a lot of guys will tell you, don't worry, we include the termite inspection. They do it. Everything is great. 3 weeks later, your lender says, okay, where's the termite inspection report? Or your attorney says, where's the termite inspection report? You look for it. You don't have it. You call the home inspector and say, hey, didn't you do the termite inspection? Yeah, we did. Where's the form? We don't give you the form. That's extra. Or you need to call the pest control company. So now you thought you were getting a good deal on the home inspection, but you have to go spend another $150 for a pest control company to come out and give you the termite inspection report. Okay. So we include it. So assuming the home inspector is including it, prices that I've heard in the range will range anywhere from $300 on the really, really low side to the highest that I know. There's a gentleman I know there's someone in Brooklyn that charges, I think, $750 without a termite. On average, I would say a good home inspector in this market, Queens, Long Island, should be between $500 and $650, somewhere falling in that range, depending on the services, level of experience. On a one-family home, up to around 2,000 square feet or so.
I got you.
That's about the range where we'd be in.
So we fall in that range. Two-family?
Two-family typically will add anywhere from $25 to $75 per additional unit. On top of that, so figure on average another $50 more for a 2-family, then another $50 for a 3-family, and then it depends on kind of what it is. A brownstone that might be over 4,000 square feet could be a little bit higher. Like that we find in Brooklyn a lot. Right. So.
I mean, another question I would have. I mean, if buyer is looking for a home inspector, how and where he can find a good home inspector? I know that many times, the real estate agents, they might suggest a home inspector to them, but is it the real deal for them, or is it just someone they know, they feel comfortable with, and someone who's going to make the home inspection sort of very easy and no issues with the house? Right. So is there a spot or a place where the buyer can go and sort of shop around for the home inspector? And if they do, what they should look for? Is it certifications? Is it experience? Is it a track record? Maybe reviews? From past clients?
Right.
Is there a portal where the people can go to search for that?
So there's a lot of sources,
Okay.
ways to find a home inspector. There's a lot of different schools of thought on it. A lot of people will tell you that you shouldn't trust your realtor because they just want to make the sale, right? You want to sell the house, and I'm on the other side. I want to protect the buyer because that's ultimately, we have a contract with the buyer like an attorney would. So our obligation, our what was I going to say? Responsibility lies with the home buyer, right? So we're there to protect the home buyer. So personally, I work with a lot of realtors that refer us, that know that we do the right job because they want to be able to sleep at night and they try to do the right thing for their client. So I would say if you trust your realtor and you feel like they are trying to do the right thing, that's definitely a place you can go. So you have to understand that realtors are involved in these deals all the time, so they see who does the right job and who is the $300 inspector that maybe doesn't do the right job for you. Your real estate
quick and dirty.
Quick and dirty, right? Yeah, you don't want those guys. And they don't last long a lot of times in the business. So if you have a realtor that's successful, they're busy, they don't want to ruin their reputation by referring you someone that's not going to do the right thing for you, because once you buy the house, you're going to call them first and complain and then maybe come to me. Another good source is your real estate attorney.
Okay.
Your mortgage brokers. They know a lot of people in the business. Any attorney, you trust them. If we're on an attorney's list, then we're doing the right thing. You could do a Google search and look at, like you said, for reviews. So look for an inspector that has a lot of good positive reviews. Read what people say about them. I think that definitely is a good place to go.
Okay.
And not like a forced review where they're like, hey, give me a review. It's got to be a natural review, like on Google or something, Yelp or something.
Okay.
There's Yelp, there's Google, Facebook reviews. Another great place is friends and family. Find out when they think of who bought their last home.
I got you.
My brother bought a house. Hey, wait, who did you use? There's a lot of times people forget.
How was the experience?
How was the experience?
Was it good? Was
Were
it
you happy?
45 minutes or 10 hours?
And more importantly, at that point, if you know a friend that bought a house 2, 3, 4 years ago, hey, was the inspector good? Is the house still standing? Do you still like the inspector after 2 or 3 years?
After doing it.
You may love me when I do the inspection, but in 2 years, maybe you say, oh, that guy's a bum, he's no good, he didn't find this or that.
Gotcha.
And, that may be true or maybe something that whatever, but, that's a good place to go. There's also some home inspector associations you can go to. One is called ASHI, the American Society of Home Inspectors,
Okay.
Which is the oldest, the most respected. It's been around the longest. Find a certified inspector, which we are.
Okay.
There's also one called Internachi, which is the other largest. Those are really the 2 key ones in the U.S.
Nice.
They will have find an inspector links, and you could do it through them as well. I'm trying to think where else. You can go through the usual like Yelp and all that. There's other inspector search websites, I guess Zillow and all that.
Okay.
MLS, but the biggest ones is your referrals, like people that you trust. I would say is the number one, and then online reviews. Find out who's using who in that area and who's doing good.
So the other question I have over here: is it possible for a home to fail a home inspection?
Okay. So we get questions a lot of times on: does the house pass? Does it fail? What would you grade the house? Would you buy the house? How does it compare to other houses? So those are all, they're valid questions, but there is really no pass or fail in a home. You may have a different desire and a different level of bank account purchasing one home than I would. So house A is example, and I'll tell a little story that I did of a house a few years back. I had a buyer that I had done maybe 5 or 6 inspections for. And it seemed like this buyer, every single time we did...
It seems like you're satisfied with the service.
He was happy with the service, but on the last inspection, honestly, I told him, I don't think you should be looking for a home. Every single inspection, he was with a different realtor. Every single inspection, one house was worse than the next. It seemed like he just went through the listings, found the cheapest home on the market, and said, let's inspect this one.
I gotcha.
So one house that we did was a...
But did he buy some?
I don't know what he did after the last one we did was a co-op apartment in the basement of a co-op building that I found out later wasn't a legal apartment in the co-op.
Wow.
So when I tell you he found the worst possible properties, the worst ones. So that buyer, one of the houses we did was in College Point. It was a ranch house with a view of the water behind it. The house was old, needed work. We found that there was termite damage throughout the whole basement. So there was damage that needed to be repaired.
Closer to the water.
not the end of the world, but had repairs, and so he ended up not buying the home, and I had a call about 2 weeks afterwards. I knew the broker too, so another buyer called and said, "Listen, we're interested in purchasing this property, blah blah blah." And I said, "Listen,
it was the same house."
Same house. I said, "All right, listen, Mr. Buyer, I just want to be honest with you. We inspected the home, and just so you know, before we go there is termite damage in the basement that needs to be repaired." She said, "I'm aware of the termite damage. I understand. I want to do the inspection." So it turns out we did the same inspection for her. That house, if the first guy bought it, would have been a disaster. He would have been in over his head. He wouldn't have known what to do. The second buyer bought the same house, repaired all the damage, put a second floor on the ranch,
Wow.
renovated it. It was the perfect house for her because she got a good deal on it.
you
So if
gotta
I
know
say
your
that house,
limitations.
you have to know your limitations, but beyond that, if I were to tell the second buyer, this house fails, it's no good, it has damage, or no, you know what, you shouldn't buy it, she wouldn't have bought that house that might have been a great deal financially for her.
Wow.
So for me, I'm not there to stop someone from buying a home, but I'm there to give them all the facts that they need to make an educated decision.
And they have to make the decision.
They have to ultimately make the decision. I will help them and guide them, and if there's really serious stuff, I will explain, like, listen, I understand you like the home, but these are major issues, and they're going to be very expensive to fix. If you're okay with that, by all means, buy the house. There have been a few where I was like, listen,
And if we're comfortable.
yeah, and not that I would told them not to buy the house, but listen, guys, this is really you really need to think about this, and this doesn't sound like what you want. Because if they're telling me I'm going to move in and fix it later, and I know that it's serious, I'm going to be honest and tell them, look, you know what, a lot of these things can't wait. You need to do them. But at the end of the day, I still can't tell them not to buy the house. I don't think that's my place to do that.
Yeah, adults, they gotta make their decision.
You're an adult. You need to make a responsible decision. I can push you. I can help you.
To just make them aware of.
Yeah, I mean, if it's really bad, I may say, listen, make sure that you have a contractor come in before you sign the
Give
contract.
us some estimates.
Because it sounds like you think it's going to be 30,000, and in my head, I'm thinking it's going to be 100. So you need to figure out what your numbers really are.
That's a big
right?
difference.
So I guess so. One question we had on here, I know you had, was as far as
Yeah, I mean.
or I added something in about estimates.
Yes.
We personally do not give estimates with our inspections, and I think that that's the way it should stay.
Okay.
There are some people out there that will give you estimates in a report. I think it takes away from what we're doing. I don't think that, while I know what it costs to do a lot of projects in a home, I don't feel I'm qualified to give you an estimate at that given time, because I'm not the contractor that's going to be doing the work.
And it's
I don't know what's behind the
and
walls.
it's not why you've been hired, actually.
It's not really why we've been hired. Sometimes an attorney will ask me, or someone will ask me, listen, what does A, B, and C cost? And we'll give them an estimate and just let them know kind of what it is. But as a general rule of thumb, your home inspector shouldn't really be giving you estimates. All the ones that I've seen are off, either way high or way low. And cost is going to vary. You can find a plumber that will do a repair for $300, and there's another plumber may come in and tell you $3,000. Because he wants to go further and replace some more pipes and say, well, you know what,
easy.
I can fix this, but it's not legal, so let's do this.
Just like a quick fix, or somebody just doing it the right way.
So there might be a way that can work, or the right way to fix it. So that can vary a lot. If you ask me what a water heater goes for, even that, I hear guys tell me, yeah, I got a water heater for $500. Another guy will tell me, yeah, it was $2,500. So what's the price? I can give you an average, but
that's a big difference.
it's a big difference, and I don't want to give you false estimates that may sway your decision and not buy the home. Right? You should get a contractor in to look. And even contractors are going to vary, but you'll have an idea of what the cost is really going to be.
And let's say if there's some issues with the property, who's really responsible of fixing them? We get this a lot when the buyer does the home inspection, and there's issues. There might be minor issues or major issues. Who's really responsible of fixing it? If anybody's responsible, is it the buyer or is it the seller? Or maybe the agent, I don't know, maybe you, the home inspector.
Maybe, right? Hopefully not. So basically, when you purchase a home, right, I'm not an attorney, I'm not going to get into that, but you're going to have a contract. In your contract of sale, it's going to have some specific protections for you. It's going to basically say, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, your roof has to be free of leaks. The electric and the plumbing and the heating have to be working, right? And that it has to be free of termites. Typically, and the termites will be taken care of by the seller usually. But that doesn't really speak to the condition of the roof or condition of the plumbing or heating or electric. It just has to be working. Anything beyond that, technically, in New York is as is, which basically means that you're purchasing it like that. Now, you can use the report and the findings to go back and negotiate. You can absolutely do that, and a lot of people do that. And if there's major issues, absolutely go back and do that. But the purpose of the home inspection, in my eyes, is not really primarily as a negotiating tool, although you can use it that way. It's to figure out what's there, what repairs, upgrades, improvements you may need to do on the property, and determine whether or not the house still fits your needs.
If there's maybe some major, let's say, right?
Right.
If there's a foundation issue,
Right.
and it's going to cost you, 25,000.
Right. So
Get
if
that fixed,
if you
still
have one
still
window,
options to sort of like back out of the deal, right?
exactly, you have a way to pull out of the deal. So you're doing it technically before you have a signed contract and deposit back with the seller, so you can back out. You're not really binding at that point.
Okay.
But if there's major issues, you can definitely negotiate. The water heater is leaking and its average life is 10 years and it's 20 years old and it's starting to leak. It needs to be replaced right away. Hey, Mr. Seller, I was going under the assumption that the hot water is good and working, but it's leaking and it could flood at any minute, so I really wanted your water heater. So maybe
like major issues like electric panel,
tripping,
wiring.
So as an example, you want to buy a home, you have the deal all worked out, we go into the home, we find out that it's an original electric service, it's 110 volts, not 220, so it's not modern, and it's fuses. Fuses can keep you A, from getting your mortgage, B, from getting homeowner's insurance.
Why is that?
The home insurance companies don't like to see fuses in a home, and as well as a few other different types of panels out there. So that's something that would need to be upgraded before they sell. So that's something that the seller would have to take care of,
and
regardless of who's buying.
From the bank, not the law.
It could be, depending on the type of loan, a requirement from the bank, and also your homeowner's insurance.
Okay.
So after you purchase the home, you secured your homeowner's insurance, they will do an inspection on the property. If they come in and find, or they'll give you a questionnaire that says what type of electric, fuses or breakers. If you say fuses, they'll say, okay, great, you have 30 days to replace it. Beautiful. So now you, as the homeowner, you just bought it, you bought that upgrade.
But it's a cheap fix, probably,
Probably a cheap fix, depends, $1,000, $2,000 or so. Okay. Depending on what it is, So we give you an idea of what's there, so that you have an opportunity to negotiate in either having the seller make repairs or give you a credit towards your purchase, or possibly taking money off the house, depending on the situation. And then you have your realtor, like John here, to take care of that negotiation for you. If you need to go down that road and try to work on the price, and he'll let you know, look, you know what, maybe there's backup offers. We may not be able to negotiate, so you need to make a decision. Or they may say, look, the house has been on the market for a while. We haven't really negotiated. We gave them a full asking offer. So you know what? Yeah, let's go back. We have some legitimate issues here. Let's use the report and go back and negotiate for you. Get you the better deal. Make sure you're comfortable and that you're not getting in over your head going forward. So.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I think we covered pretty much everything. Do you have anything else you think what you get commonly?
Yeah, I mean, so other things so how to choose an inspector. So we talked about where to find one.
Yes.
Verify that the home inspector is licensed. You can go to Department of State, so New York Department of State.gov, I believe. Look up home inspectors, find their name, where they are, and make sure that they're currently licensed.
Okay.
You could ask about insurance. All home inspectors are required to have general liability, which covers, let's say, my ladder falls over and breaks something.
Okay, so if you trip down or something.
If I get hurt, if I break something on site, typically. But New York State law does not require them to carry errors and omissions insurance, which is the more expensive one, and which is what protects the home inspectors, the referring parties, and the actual buyer if there was a major issue down the road. Right? So it's not for little things, but it will cover for big things. The other thing to ask is how long have they been in business? So a low price, a lot of times, will indicate that the guy maybe is new to the business.
Trying to get a business.
Hasn't done many inspections. I would ask them how long they've been in the business, and also, just because they've been in the business 10 years, they might be part-time and they've only done 100 inspections. Ask them how many inspections they've done. I can speak from my experience. Up until about 1,000 inspections or so, you're still really aggressively learning on what you're doing. So if they've done less than that, and they won't tell you how many they've done.
That sounds like a lot.
Sounds like a lot. It's really not that many. You're talking
3,000 hours.
You're talking about 1,000 inspections on a new inspector in their first 5 years of business. Let's say in their first 3 years of business, an average inspector has probably done, unless they're working for someone, 100 to 150 inspections
every year.
Total over 3 years. By the time they build their business up. If they've been in business 5 years, if they're doing the right thing, they may at 5 years be up to, let's say, 600 or 700 inspections. So you're talking about, if you're a plumber or you're in the trades, usually you'll have like a 3-year internship.
Okay.
We don't have that in home inspections. So licensing is basically 10 inspections in the field. Someone might say they're licensed, but they just got into the field with 100 hours of classroom training.
You're number 11.
You're number 11. And I was there, so I'm speaking from experience. Thankfully, I've gotten calls from some of my first clients 8-10 years later, so they're still happy. So I think I did the right thing. But I feel bad for my first 100 clients, realistically.
Wow.
And I did more than most in my training. I probably had 40 inspections under my belt before I did any paid. But even then, you're uncomfortable. You don't really not sure of what you're reporting to people. You don't know how to explain. So less than 1,000 inspections, to me, that's when you're kind of experienced. And realistically, until you get to like 2,000, 2,500, that's when you're comfortable in what you're doing. You're still constantly learning. Me personally, I would want to hire someone that's done well over 1,000 inspections if I could.
Okay.
You know, even if they were in the trades or whatever their background is, I would definitely look for that.
Okay.
You know, myself, I'm up to, I think, somewhere around 4,000 inspections.
4,000 inspections.
Something like that, yeah.
Wow.
Somewhere in that range. You know, and that's just the residential stuff, and then there's commercial and other things that we do. But, yeah, you want someone with experience to definitely do that. And then the other thing to ask is, what type of report do they provide? So there's still guys out there that are doing handwritten reports with carbon copies.
So they're really looking to save the trees, I guess.
No, they're not. So first of all, you want it to be green, right? We're in that
Yeah.
green time. Personally, we've been doing computerized reports for 15 years, since I started the business. We still do computerized reports. Everything's emailed out, and there's photos in the reports. If we do a thermal image and we find something on a scan, like a leak on the thermal image, we include that in the reports also. So you have that information, and you also have ammunition. So if you want to go back and negotiate, you have that strong report with photos
right.
in it, clear, legible, easy to read. That's what you should have. And a report should be probably anywhere between 25 and 45 or so pages.
Wow.
There's companies that give 80 to 100 page reports, no good. 5-10 pages is like a preformed report you get online.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't recommend those either, because they're just like a checklist type report. You want what's called a narrative report, which is basically someone actually wrote a report specific to your home.
I got you.
Not just a checklist.
It's
that
not
says,
just like a general one.
yeah, these guys have yes, no, pass, fail, pass, fail, pass, fail, and then they'll be like, crack on the wall, fix. Very simple comments. You want a little more in depth, but you don't want too in depth where it's just all they are doing is trying to cover themselves.
I got you.
So I would say those are the important things. You know, what tools do they use? The tools we got into before, the experience level. How long does the inspection take? Will you be the one doing the inspection? Do you have employees that are doing the inspection? Matters.
I mean, good stuff, guys.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you guys have any questions, you can comment below, or you can email me, and we'll certainly we'll give you the answers. You know, this is John Tayeb with Real Talk with JT, and this is Tony Christoforou from Touchstone Home Inspections. His information should be below, so you can reach him if you guys need any help. Again, Tony, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.